All right, so we'll continue next with the results. Okay.
Okay.
Okay, so there are two types of results that we have to look at. Do you know what they are?
We have to look at the comparison between the children and the adults and the difference in children's identification and rejection accuracy between human faces and cartoon faces.
Yep, and there are a few more. Okay,
Okay.
so remember we learned quantitative and qualitative before?
Yeah.
Okay, you remember what they are?
Yeah. So qualitative is based on observation. So basically it's written descriptions of your result, whereas quantitative data is basically like the frequency um, of your results. So
What does
you would use like the mean, the
right?
mode, the median. Yeah.
Yes, okay, very good. So quantitative, you mentioned comparison between children and adults, right?
Right.
So let's just go through the list. So first is correct identification rates for humans faces, and the next one would be what? Correct identification rates for
Cartoon and human faces.
yeah, so cartoons. So the first one is humans, second one is cartoons, okay?
Yeah.
And then the next one would be the comparison between human and cartoon faces. And then the child versus adult in identifying, firstly, cartoon characters, and the second one would be human faces. So you would need to know the quantitative findings for all of these five categories, okay?
Okay.
All right. I think I won't go through them, okay? But if you do need the numbers for them, you can just ask me.
Okay.
Okay, and the next one would be qualitative findings, right? So the first one would be free recall descriptions, and the second would be the procedure differences between children and adults. Okay,
Okay.
so what does free recall description mean?
Um, I'm. Oh, is it like when they just like say and they just describe it verbally?
Yeah,
Describe.
so that one is for children, right? Okay, so first what happened was participants were asked to describe everything they could
Mhm.
remember about each video clip. Okay, so the researchers recorded responses from the child participants, but adult participants recorded their own responses. Okay, so you see the comparison here.
Yeah.
Okay, so whenever I'm telling you all of these findings and stuff, right? I want you to maybe like mentally, or even better if in your notes you can draw comparisons there, just so that you can look at like the contrast between all of these different categories. Okay?
Okay.
All right, the next one would be so what happened? Yes. So this was used as a filler task between video exposure and lineup presentation. You know what filler task means, right?
Yeah.
Okay. And um with approximately 2 minutes between video exposure and lineup presentation. Okay, the next
Okay.
one is the procedure difference between children and adults, right? So the procedure varied slightly for these children and adults. So different approaches to introducing the task and obtaining consent. Okay, the study ensured that there were comfort and reduced stress for children. So what they did was they used crafts and gentle questioning, but adults were introduced to the study in a more formal setting, in a formal lab setting. Okay, they were asked to recall the details in writing and given demographic questionnaires after the task was completed. So you see there is a slight variation in terms of the procedure when it comes to children and adults. So you have to keep that in mind when you are analyzing this study. Okay.
Okay.
All right.
Okay.
The representation and interpretation. So what we have to do is basically just analyze it, right? So the quantitative results, what does it show?
Is it the identification response and the identification rate?
Right? What can you analyze from it? Okay, so you know the numbers, right?
I'm not sure about the numbers.
Okay. Do you want to just take a look at the numbers first and then let me know what it represents and whether you can interpret it? Do you have the numbers with you? If not, I can send it over to you.
I could take a look at my textbook.
Yeah, sure. You can do that. Do you find it?
Yeah.
Okay.
Okay.
Okay, so just by taking a look at the numbers, right? Just the numbers itself, can you tell me how you interpret it?
Okay, so is it that females have a lower identification rate than males, like for children?
Okay, but how about the more important ones? Okay, how about this? How about I send you some numbers. Okay, so remember some of these are the important categories. Okay, so you see the first one is correct identification rate for humans. Second is cartoons, right? And then this is the next. I'll just send it to you in contrast, okay? And then the last one would be children versus adults in identifying, then the two, right? Cartoon and humans.
Okay.
Okay, so how about I go through the interpretation of these numbers. Okay?
Okay.
Alright, so maybe you can practice like the interpretation and stuff later on.
Yeah.
We'll do that later on, okay? But for this study, we'll just go through it together.
All right.
Okay, so for the quantitative results, right, what we're looking at is firstly the correct identification rates. It shows that children are significantly more accurate in identifying familiar cartoon characters than human faces. But remember, we want a contrast when we are thinking about studies and all of that. So, in contrast, adults will show better identification accuracy overall, okay, with slightly higher accuracy for cartoons. So, what do you think about this?
Children are more familiar with cartoons, so
Yeah,
Yeah.
right. So basically, this suggests that familiarity and nature of the stimuli. Remember what stimuli is?
Yeah.
In this context, what is it?
Basically things in your environment that may cause a response.
Yeah, okay. So in this context, it would be cartoon versus human. Yeah. So it suggests that familiarity and nature of stimuli play very, very crucial roles in accuracy of eyewitness identification, especially for children. That's why, like you said, right, children are more accurate in identifying familiar cartoon characters. Okay.
Right.
And for the qualitative aspect of this study, okay, it gave us insights into cognitive processes and attentional aspects of both children and adults, right? So the qualitative data actually complements the quantitative findings. So this helps us to have a more holistic view of how different age group process and recall information in ID scenarios.
Right.
Okay?
Okay.
All right. So the conclusions. The conclusion, there are three categories that we will be looking at. Okay, so the first is role of social and versus cognitive factors. Second is differences between children and adults. And the last is implication for eyewitness identification. Okay, so what were the conclusions for role of social versus cognitive factors?
Okay, so basically,
Okay, how about I will tell you what the study assessed. Okay,
Okay.
so first the study assessed whether children's false positive responses in target absent lineups are more influenced by social than cognitive factors. So what did it find?
So basically, social factors were more likely to affect the low correct rejection rate, and because the children expect that they should make a decision. And there's a difference. Okay, there's a difference between adults and children in terms of their
Wait,
accuracy.
Okay. So yeah, so that's actually like in the next category. So that's why I paused. Yeah. It's okay. It's
Sorry.
good that you know it, right? It's just I want to fill in a little bit of the blanks. Okay. So
Right.
you what you're saying is correct. So basically children, they identified familiar targets like the cartoon characters with
Yeah.
almost 100% accuracy, right?
Okay.
But like you said, they had significantly lower rate of correct rejections in target absent lineups compared to adults, right? Like you said, because probably because they thought they were expected to pick someone, right?
Right.
So like you said, social factors rather than cognitive ability play more significant role in children's false positive responses. Okay. Okay, so just now you were saying the differences between children and adults. That's the second part of our conclusion. What were you about to say?
The reason why I like combined like that one with the one we talked about earlier was because I thought it was both under social, because this one so like this would like it explains the difference between adults and children in terms of their accuracy in rejecting human faces. So in this case, like adults would be more accurate in human faces because they're more used to that stimuli, whereas children are used to seeing cartoons, so they would score higher. And I thought this was related to social demand.
Okay, yeah. So I think You're right. Everything actually is linked. In psychology, everything is linked, but especially when you're talking about a specific study, of course, almost everything is linked. So you can make a linkage to everything. It's just the way that you categorize it, right? So there's no right or wrong way of categorizing it. But yeah, so we can put it together or we can just separate it. It's up to you, right? But
Okay.
it's just the way that we're going through it. Okay. Just now you said that children showed a higher rate of um, correct. What do you say? Children show a correct. Um,
Um, like higher accuracy in identifying cartoon faces.
yeah. Okay, but now what we are going to talk about is because just now I think we mentioned that already, but what we're going to talk about now is that they show a lower correct rejection rate for both cartoon and human faces. So familiar and unfamiliar targets, they have a lower correct rejection rate compared to adults. Okay, so what does this mean?
Uh, it means that children are more susceptible to um social what's the word social um
Social
more
factors, right?
yeah
Yeah,
they're more
so that
affect
that was actually the conclusion from our previous category, which is role of social versus cognitive factors. But actually, um, because you did mush it together, that's why you have the same conclusion, right? But actually, you can come up with another conclusion based on what I just said, the lower correct rejection rate compared to adults, right? So the other conclusion that you can come to is that children are more prone to falsely identify someone in target absent lineups, right? So regardless of how familiar they are, because they even in familiar targets, they still had a lower correct rejection rate, right? Because like you said, the social factor, maybe it plays a significant role and it pressures the child to pick someone, right?
okay.
Yeah, so here you can actually split it into two, therefore finding two different conclusions. Okay, and the last one would be the implication for eyewitness identification. So this study have important implications for children's ID in legal settings. Okay, so because there is lower correct rejection rate among children, what does it suggest about the eyewitness testimony of children?
I'm not sure. Perhaps that for children, social factors play a larger part in decision making in target absent lineups.
Yes. So we have to be more wary because in target absent lineups, um, their testimony may be less reliable, right? Because
Right.
of, like you said, social influences, right? So what does this mean for in legal context? It means that we need to be careful and give careful consideration and potentially modified procedures, right, when we involve child eyewitnesses, because now we know the weakness of child eyewitnesses, so maybe we can modify the procedures a little bit to
Right.
make it like more accurate maybe.
Miss, in a way, is this a form of social desirability bias?
How so?
In the sense that the children may not know it, but they are like trying to please the researcher by choosing um one of the one of um the lineup uh one of the lineups, but so like the target may not be there, but they may choose it anyways just to please the researcher, maybe.
Yeah, could be. But
Okay.
that's also why we have to make sure that there is lesser, what was the authority um, cues, right? Remember? That's
Yeah.
why the female experimenters tried to dress in professional casual attire, right? So in this study, they actually tried their best to take all this into account and then make sure that the study was as accurate as possible.
Right.
Yeah,
Okay.
but I mean, of course, uh, this might show social desirability bias, right? But yeah, so that's what we are looking for in this study, right? To analyze children's psychology.
Right.
Okay, so the next one is strengths and weaknesses. Okay, so based on um, all the information that we have gone through, and this study alone, can you tell me what strengths you can think of about this study and what weaknesses there are?
Okay, so the first strength would be the use of a lab experiment, and this means that the environment itself is artificial and it has higher control of extraneous variables, which ensures that it is the independent variable that affects the dependent variables. So therefore, increasing the validity of the study.
Okay.
And the other strength would be the collection of quantitative data. And this is good because with numerical data, you are able to calculate the average and you're able to make comparison and draw out a more accurate um, conclusion, because qualitative it's less subjective than uh, qualitative data.
Okay. Yeah. Anything else?
Um, and for weaknesses,
Okay, hold
it
on, hold on.
oh
So
okay.
before you continue, let me add on. So other strengths that you can think of is counterbalancing and randomization. Do you know what this means?
Oh yes, this is to reduce participant variable and order effect.
Okay, can you apply it into this study?
Um okay, so the sample was for the children, it was kindergarten students from the private school, and for adults uh it was participants were taken from on a certain university, so the same university. So because the samples were taken from the same place, they may share similar characteristics. So by counterbalancing, you are like uh it's like uh they get to experience all wait no I think it's more on order effect. So fatigue, so basically all participants will go through each condition of the study. So uh yeah and it reduces fatigue effect, so they'll be able to participate so for the lineups they'll be able to identify, like they will be like awake in the moment, they won't be like tired or anything. So when they're tired, it could affect the results of the study because they will just like do it and they may not think too much
Okay.
into it.
Okay, so that wasn't actually what I meant, but what you
Oh,
said is actually a strength of
oh,
the study. It's under another like heading, I guess. So when I talk about counterbalancing and randomization, that wasn't really what I was talking about. But what you were talking about, let's just talk about what you said first and then go back to what I was talking about. Okay. So what you were talking about was participants' comfort and well-being, right? So um I think I'll just go through like um the sub points of this, right? So what does participants comfort and well-being mean? I think you did cover like most of it, but I'm just going to tell you a little bit more, right? So
Okay.
the study took several steps to ensure comfort and well-being of the child participants. Okay, so for example, remember we talked about how the researchers engaged them in crafts, the use of crafts, yeah, and then children were also introduced in a to the study in a non-threatening manner, right? Then they had crafts, and before starting the experiment, to help them feel comfortable, to establish a comfortable environment, right? So like you said, this um, reduce their anxiety and stress, okay, which is very crucial when working with young children in a research setting. But for adults, remember, it was more systematic. So that's why there is a little bit of a difference there. Yeah.
Right.
So yeah. So when we're talking about this, we're talking about the child participants. Okay, so for counterbalance balancing and randomization, what we are talking about is actually the positioning of targets or replacements in the lineup. So it was randomized, okay, and the order of the video and photo array presentation was varied. Okay, so this counterbalancing reduced potential bias and order effect, therefore enhancing the internal validity of the study. Do you understand what all of that means?
Yeah.
Okay, so how about the weaknesses?
Um, the weaknesses would be it has low ecological validity.
Yeah,
And
this is the one we always come back to, right? Okay.
this is the one that I always use. If I see
Yeah.
like lab experiment, I'm gonna use this.
Yeah, of course, of course. It's a free mark. It's a free mark.
Yeah.
Okay.
So basically, since it's a lab experiment, it's conducted in an artificial environment. So the participants are not in their usual environment, and behaviors may not be natural.
Okay, yeah.
So yeah.
I think you're quite familiar with this argument. How about the others?
Yeah.
Next one.
Um, the other one. Um. Uh. Could I say? Can I talk about? Oh wait, no. I don't think they would have demand characteristics. I'm not sure actually for the next one.
Okay, so you can talk about how there was limited age range and demographics. So remember, children were only 4 to 7 years old, right? And so this limits the how yeah, yeah, the generalizability of findings to other age groups, right? Because remember, we're looking at developmental differences, right? So the developmental differences in memory and suggestibility can vary significantly, right? Because this is children that we are talking about, right? So this is actually quite a big weakness in this study, okay? And the other one would be the use of familiar versus unfamiliar targets. So this the reason why they did this was because they wanted to see how it would influence identification accuracy, right? But it might have introduced a bias because children are more engaged with and better at recognizing familiar cartoon characters, right? So this could lead to an overestimation of their identification abilities in a more realistic scenario where the targets are likely to be unfamiliar. Do you understand?
Yeah, I understand.
Okay, all right. So, what I'm going to do is, okay, so I want you to try to clean up your notes now and let me know if you have any questions. Okay?
All right.